Can't buy me love.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good thing you don't care about money because there just might not be any, unfortunately. Looks like the experts are calling for a diversified reserve currency ahead of the G8 meeting. There's going to be a global think tank that's going to take place in Beijing just a few days before the G8 meeting this week on July 8th to the 10th. Back to our guest, Bob Chapman, the International Forecaster newsletter, and you can go to theinternationalforecaster.com and you can get a complimentary copy to see if you want to subscribe. I think you're going to want to because this thing is mammoth. I mean, it's more. It's a book. It is almost a book every week that you get via email, and I encourage you to either go to the website, theinternationalforecaster.com, or call 877-479-8178, 877-479-8178. Bob, let's talk about the dollar with the devaluation, the continual devaluation of the dollar, and the Chinese meeting that's coming up, the Chinese think tank meeting, as well as the G8. What do you see is going to take place, or what would you expect might take place here?
Well, one of the things we're seeing is less foreigners buying U.S. Treasuries and agency securities, agencies of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, et cetera. And about 3 years ago, the Japanese essentially stopped buying them. They're just rolling what they've got. In other words, keeping what they've got and buying new replacements. And so they haven't increased their position. The Chinese have started to head in that direction as well. They can't sell, because if they do, they'll knock the dollar down, and that will impair all of the bonds that they already own. Between the two of them, they must own $2.5 trillion worth, I think it's 23% of our debt. And that all comes from what I just mentioned, Mickey Mousing their own currencies. And it's coming home to roost, so to speak. But the dollar is under tremendous pressure, and it'll remain so in spite of the manipulation by the United States government each day in the markets. I don't know what it's doing this morning, but they're trying to get it above 81 in the USDX, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. The point is, I think it's going down, and I think those who are going to the meeting, the G8 meeting, are going to talk about that because they see that happening as well. And so they're just going to have to suffer through it, but they're looking for an alternative. And the very simple alternative is take the 10 major currencies and weigh them and put them in as a international trading unit, which would change in value 24 hours a day every second, because the value of each currency would change. But in order to make it work, they've got to have a gold backing. And I don't think that's going to happen. And if they don't do that, it's not the solution. And so they're going to dance around with this at this meeting, and nothing's going to happen. And
you're talking about the G8 or the Chinese
G8.
think tank?
And
okay.
That's because the U.S. is staving them off. And you can understand why. I mean, the people behind the U.S. government on Wall Street and banking, and to a certain extent the international conglomerates, have raped the United States. I mean, just look what they've done with free trade, globalization, offshore, and outsourcing. Mm-hmm. They've killed our entire industry. And, you know, that kind of brings us into what you spoke of earlier on cap and trade. The bottom line on cap and trade has nothing to do with CO2 or any gases or anything else. It has everything to do with 20% taxation.
Okay, let me stop you. The cap and trade bill that's going to be voted on, what does the cap part of it stand for?
Capital and trade.
Okay, the capital and trade. I mean, what does this really mean to us? What is this bill supposed to be?
It's the marketplace for credits given by government to different entities. You might be a coal-producing company in West Virginia. It might be General Electric. It might be, and it's a whole bunch of people who are involved in creating CO2, so to speak.
When we get back
they
from
would
this,
have those credits and they would trade them.
Okay, we're going to come back from this break after this. We've got a 3-minute break. Ted Anderson's going to join us. We haven't talked to him in a while. We want to find out what's happening in gold and silver. We'll be right back. We'll take your phone calls, 800-259-9231. Back in 3 minutes with the Power Hour. Welcome back to the Power Hour. This is Joyce Riley and
Josh.
Joining me on the Power Hour today. And our guest is Ted Anderson. We're talking to Ted right now about what's going on in the gold market. If you like really high quality, high priced gold, if you like high priced gold, well, now's not the time. But you might want to save some money and get invested in gold. Ted Anderson, who is president of Midas Resources, thank you for joining us today on the Power Hour, sir.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me up. Wow, what a market. Inflation now, or not inflation, unemployment is over 10%. That's the government numbers. I don't know what they need to have in order to describe it as a depression, but
it's a problem.
Yeah. What do we have? Bob probably can answer. I don't know. Did we reach 20%? During the Great Depression?
Yeah, we reached 25 to 30.
Wow. Well, but I think 11 is being positive.
If you strip out the birth-death ratio from the government's U6 figure, unemployment is 20.5%. And that's a fact.
Government is, wait a minute. Unemployment is what right now?
20.5%.
Explain how that ratio works, Bob, will you?
Well, the ratio is this. The government says, look, we don't have the facilities to check every small and medium-sized business in the country, so we're going to guess at what they're creating in the way of jobs. And, of course, the figure never goes down. They are always creating jobs, at least as far as the government's concerned. Mm-hmm. And so what they do each month is they create about 150 to 200,000 jobs out of thin air. So if you extract them from the total on U6, now U6 is short-term unemployment, which is 9.5%. All the people who are no longer working 40 hours a week, but are working, say, 30 hours a week. All the people who no longer collect state unemployment benefits, and all the people who are discouraged. Now, that's the real figure, and it's 20.5%. Now, the government's figure is 16.5, but they have the birth-death ratio inside of it, and if you extract that, that's where the number goes to.
So it's a lot worse. I think we all know this. It's a lot worse than we're being told, just like everything. It's a lot worse than we're being told, other than the Michael Jackson situation, which is the only thing we're probably accurately being told. Bob Chapman, I thank you for joining us today, the editor of the International Forecaster newsletter. Any response to what Ted had to say, or any forecast that you would like to give?
There's one comment I'd like to make before leaving, and that is that one of the people on the network, Butch Pa, listened to my recommendation a dozen years ago and bought silver around $4. And he sold the silver, I think, around $12 and paid off his house. So there's lots of stories like that.
Yeah, and it is so rewarding to think that they didn't do anything but just hold it, and they were able to pay off their properties. That is wonderful. Let me go to Joe.
Use patience.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let me go to Joe in Arkansas. Joe, you're on the air with Bob Chapman. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. My question concerns the business of California running out of money, say. They all come from Mexico or Chile or from the Dominican Republic. So it looks like obvious, and you can't find a California avocado anymore, so it looks like obviously there's a lot of avocado growers in California, not making money anymore.
Yeah,
and California, as I understand it, used to have a lot of electronics and no doubt lots and lots and lots of other industry, which is probably now in China. And so my question is, are these state government people ever going to get the idea that if they want to have some money, maybe they ought to get concerned about getting their tax base back? I don't see any signs that they're thinking.
You're making way too much sense. You're making way too much sense for the average person, Joe. And let me just add, I was reading your book. I could not sleep last night. I woke up about 1 o'clock, and I started reading your book. And, boy, did that give me a lot to think about. I just want to commend you on that. I'll be talking to you about your new book. But the name of your new book, Joe?
Is Renewing Your Life Force.
Renewing Your Life Force. Man, it is a lot of material, too. Anyway, we'll be talking about that later. But let me go back to Bob Chapman. Bob,